Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the E02 Podcast. Tonight's guest is James Azar, CISO at AP4 Group and host at the CyberHub Podcast. And during the whole episode, we'll probably plug the CyberHub Podcast as well. James is well known within the industry for having good content out there, so please show some love. We'll obviously plug the pod in the description, and also we'll probably add an advertisement in here as well. So, yeah, James, how are you? You all good?
Oh, Leo, thanks for having me, man. It's weird to be the interviewee rather than the interviewer, right? It's like it feels unnatural. It feels like I should be asking you questions.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was actually on an episode last night and we were talking about this kind of bizarre multiversal, like all the podcast hosts. And I was like, why don't we just do like a New Year's thing? Obviously different time zones. Some people will be drinking at 9 a.m., some people will be drinking at 12 p.m., whatever it may be. And it's like, again, we should just open it up to the biggest community that we can. And then we're just on the spot, live, having some beers, whatever it may be, and then just seeing what kind of traction we get. But I don't know, it could be a complete disaster. I don't
I
know.
mean, I've got Blue Label right there, so
Nice.
we can. I mean, that's my drink of choice, right? That's why it's in the back. Coffee and Blue Label. If you put them together, by the way, it's pretty good.
Wow, I never knew that.
Double
And being
espresso, Blue
Scottish,
Label.
I kind of feel ashamed that I should have known that. But it almost kind of feels like something you would maybe get in Ireland,
You know,
mixing it up.
I don't want to stereotype a population. In America, that's a recipe for disaster nowadays. But but I enjoy a double espresso. I don't drink black coffee. Love double espressos, so I drink espressos all the time. That's all I drink. I can't drink coffee ever. Like if you give me a cup of coffee, normal coffee, I will spit it. But what is this crap and spit it out? I only enjoy espressos, but espressos with a little bit of Blue Label in it. I don't know. It does
Hmm.
good to give you a nice balanced buzz all day. I'm not saying I do it every day. Some days
Yeah,
you need
yeah,
it more than most, especially being in cyber, right? I
yeah,
mean, cybersecurity practitioners are one known to burn out, right? Known to abuse substances
yeah.
because of the amount of stress that's on the job, right? And so, there's some days where you need it. It's just the, the truth of it.
Absolutely. I mean, we've had so many people that find a niche or a kind of escape, and whether that's a month in Vegas and then they come back to reality, or it's an amalgamation of different alcoholic drinks. And one recently, I spoke with someone, and they were like, yoga has completely saved their life, and it's
Hmm.
like never really thought about it. I've obviously heard of like jujitsu and multiple other things, but it's like yoga. So who knows? We might just merge it all into one and then just see what the hell happens. But anyway, I digress. So James, talk me through your career and yeah, kind of overview of who you are as a person as well.
Yeah. So today I'm the CISO for AP4. Group AP4 is in the power industry, private equity backed, um, predominantly in the distribution, maintenance, and servicing side of the house for power plants, transmission distribution station, oil and gas, etc. Very, very interesting industry because I spent the first probably 15 years of my career in financial services. Um, and financial services, for all intensive purposes, when you're a security practitioner or just in technology, it's probably where the biggest adoption and larger budgets exist, right? The more you can automate in financial services, the more you can streamline, the faster, the better. Security is obviously not an afterthought, but a first thought in a lot of these cases, not everywhere, but in most cases. And so going to critical infrastructure for me was kind of setting back 15 years, kind of going back to 2011, 2010 in financial services, where you go, whoa, we're just now learning about all these things that in banking you were doing in 2015, 2016, 2020, 2019. Stuff that I was doing in 2011 in finance I'm doing now in critical infrastructure. Very, very, very kind of cloud based stuff. The whole idea of going from on-prem to cloud to a hybrid type of model, etc. um and prior to that, I spent some time in the U.S. military and in telecom, is and before moving to financial services, and that's kind of my career path. Um, I tried college, wasn't for me. I'm more of a hands-on kind of person, um, and not kind of a structured, 4-year type of institutional. Never seemed never seemed appealing. And when I tried it, I could just never stick with it. It just seemed like I'm accruing debt for no real purpose. Um, and so, and again, not belittling people who go to college. I completely understand the need for some people to do that, and I think there's specific trades and crafts that there's no way you could become an expert at them, or become anywhere viable without getting a college degree. One, medicine another, right? But I think cyber is a little different. I think technology is a little different, and I think part of that change is technology adoption, right? YouTube, right where we're at, right where we're sitting right now, talking to people who are watching and listening, is one aspect of that as well. Um, and so, I never started at the low end level. I've always been I've always been entrepreneur by nature, and so entrepreneurship led me to really start stuff that I didn't quite understand and taught myself, and went through it, and that's my path to where I am today, and I enjoy it, and it's also helped me kind of look outside the box when it comes to hiring and evaluating talent, and kind of I go about it in non-traditional methods, and it's kind of it, something I completely believe in is no path should be identical, and in cyber, I think you and I both know, speaking with so many people that we speak with, there's not a there's not a singular path. When you speak to, if you've ever spoken to a reporter, right? And I've spoken to a fair amount of reporters in my career. You always say, "So what'd you do? How'd you become a reporter or a writer for, the Post, the Times, wherever, right? The Hill." I went to journalism school, came out, worked in local news. I ran in my local newspaper. All the stories are the same. Give me the same two stories in cyber. Put 10 people in the room, and I guarantee you'll have 10 different stories of how someone got into cybersecurity. I believe that's the power of our industry, by the way. That's the beauty of our industry, is there's not a singular method of story. I don't think there's that good old boys club. Although in the military you see it, right? Army guys stick to Army, Navy stick to Navy, Air Force, Chair Force stick to the chair, and the Marines stick to the Marines. But outside of that, there's not that kind of what school did you go to, where'd you graduate from, and so forth.
Yeah.
Not at every level of our industry, at least.
I think
And
it's a
and
really good. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I think it's a really good point, that non-traditional aspect. That's what again really builds a strong community that we have in cyber, because everyone's journey is completely different. Some of them are so obscure that it just blows your mind, and it's
yeah,
really good. And I guess that's what, hopefully, inspires other people to go into cyber. But sorry, James, please continue.
no, and the final thing about me is, I live in the great state of Georgia, in the United States, but I grew up in Colorado, and love cold weather and snow and whatnot. But spent a lot of time in the ocean as well. So give me a surfboard or give me a snowboard, but you know that I want snow or water, but I'm landlocked right now in Atlanta and not very happy about it.
And do you think you'll move back to either or?
Yeah, I mean, there's a plan in play, right? I think people like us, and I say that to everyone listening. I think if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably like us, in the fact that you're strategizing your next move, and I want to be in an ocean climate, within the next 18 months of my life, hopefully.
Well, if you believe in global warming and the crisis that's coming, we'll be there in 18 months anyway. So,
Depending on who
and
you
you,
ask, we should have been there 20 years ago, based on some experts.
I know, and we keep seemingly just escaping the inevitable. But yeah, again, James, it's excellent insight, and I'm interested. Like, you know, obviously your path towards leadership, in particular being a CISO. Is there any leadership advice you would give to anyone? Maybe currently moving into a management role or making their journey on that path?
Be honest with yourself. Know what you know and admit what you don't know. And don't be afraid of smart people telling you what you're supposed to know. I think the biggest part about leadership is we have this weird assumption in our heads that we should know everything.
Yeah.
And the challenge with that is In no other industry on the planet is someone expected to know everything,
Yeah.
right? So when you're a CEO of a company, you're typically the CEO for one of two reasons. You founded the business and you're a good sales guy, or you founded the business and you're the face of the company, hence a Steve Jobs or a Larry Page over at Google, right? Just as an example, face of the company, right? But then Larry Page never was the face of Google. That was always Schmidt. What's his name? I forgot the former CEO's name of Google, and so he was the face while the founders were in the background, right? They kind of hired a experienced CEO to let him kind of deal with the investors and so forth while they built products. Steve Jobs, on the other hand, was hands on in all aspects of the business, but he knew the business. He built it. When you're a CISO, when you're moving into a leadership role as a practitioner, and it's not your company, you're coming into something that's already established, or potentially a company that has its own set of politics, its own set of challenges, its own set of experiences, and you can't be expected to know everything. You shouldn't, and don't be afraid to ask questions. Um, and it's okay to play the I don't know card. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, because you can't be expected to know everything. I told you before we started recording. I strongly believe that cybersecurity is like medicine, in the fact that it's a very you know a, a trauma doctor in an ER knows how to not diagnose you, but keep you alive just long enough for an expert to come in and diagnose your injury, whether it be in your brain, in your back, in your arm, in your leg, or wherever else in your body. That's what they know how to do. They're kind of, a triage person. They're not an expert at everything. They can look at an MRI and think something, but then they still need a doctor to confirm that, an expert in that area to confirm it. And oftentimes, we as security practitioners feel the need to have to be experts at everything: application security, cloud security, DevSecOps, governance, risk, compliance, board relations, employee relations, and so forth. And you can't be all of that. You just can't. And the expectation that you give yourself that is why there's burnout in our industry. Hire smart people, empower your smart people to do smart work as a leader. Make sure you're focusing on building out a team that understands that there's a mission, that there's a team and not an individual performance and an individual contributor. Speak as we and not I. My team, we, not I. And you'll be successful because your team will realize that you're promoting them. So the idea of backstabbing kind of goes out the door. The moment people feel the time you see a lot of backstabbing as a leader, where you get worried about kind of having to keep people at bay, is when you say I. And I guarantee you, in 90% of the cases, that's the case. Whenever you see dysfunctional teams, it's because the leader says, I did this. No, you didn't. The team did. You were part of the team. Promote your team. Let your team feel appreciated, empowered, and so forth. And you'll do great as a leader. No one will replace you because they realize that the ship is steered correctly because you're at the helm. Um, and
It's
so
very, it's
that's my
very,
advice for leaders.
it's very sound advice, and you're right. It's I think there's so many people that forget that when you get to that level, it's because of other people, that they are your foundation. They have helped you. They have filled that gap that you were unable to do. So very sound advice. And then, moving into our next segment is the challenges that you've been faced with within the industry. Again, they can be personal, professional, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, if I divide it to personal, starting off with personal, it's obviously the work life balance,
Yeah.
right? As security practitioners, I think, when you're an accountant, when you're a CFO of a company, you kind of cruise for 2.5 months. You do your 9 to 5, and then you've got 2, 3 weeks where you're doing your end of quarter reports, end of year reports, and that's your busy time, and you're putting in a whole bunch of hours. And then you go home, you rest, you relax, you restart, you kind of take it easy coming out of that sprint. And security is almost like it's an up and down game that's always up and down, right? And you've got times where when you're going through an event and you're in that event for weeks on end, hours, 20 hours, 21 hours. You're canceling vacations, you're missing weekends, you're missing family events. I think that's the biggest challenge when it comes to a personal challenge in this industry, is there's a sacrifice that comes with this, that's often I don't want to say overlooked, but often underestimated, especially by companies and partially because we fail at communicating that to the company, right? We fail in communicating that to HR. We fail in communicating that to executive leadership um, um, because of imposter syndrome. And I think from a professional level, it's communicating security effectively takes time and it takes relationship building. And oftentimes, we as security practitioners feels like we have a time clock running, right? So put a sand clock next to any security practitioner and watch this stress level increase. Take any CISO in any position, and if they do their first risk assessment, they go, the house is on fire, the roof is burning, there's a tornado in the backyard, there's an earthquake in the middle of the basement, the floor is cracked, everything is, and you got to start kind of organizing that mess. And if you don't control your own emotions, if you don't understand that the first step of security in any organization is relationships, one. The second one is understanding business processes and business requirements. What does my company do? How does my company make money? And what assets support my company making that money? And if that's how you start solving problems and communicating within your business, as the CISO, you'll win. If you don't do that, then you're going to find yourself out of a job or leaving after 18 or 24 months. You haven't been able to accomplish much. You're going to look at your time back and you're going to reflect on it and you're going to wonder about all the different mistakes you've made during that time period. And I think that's, Leo, that's specifically to me kind of is part of the problem of why we see budgeting challenges for security. When you're not building relationships with your peers in the business and you're not identifying the key teams that really are that have the executive ear, right? So if you're a, an engineering team at a big company and you're producing software and that engineering team produces a critical part of software for the company, then understand the leadership there probably has the ear of the CEO and the board because they're producing the product. So you can't fight the product team. You've got to work within the product team. And to do that, you've got to build a relationship. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen from one lunch or one meeting. It's going to happen from a continuous process of interaction, of going in and saying, "Hey, can I sit in on some of your stand up meetings every day? You mind? I want to be a fly on the wall." Sure, why not?
Let's talk about something that might be keeping you awake at night: cybersecurity. According to Vanta's latest State of Trust report, it's the number one concern for UK businesses. That's where Vanta comes in. Whether you're a startup, growing fast, or already established, Vanta can help you get ISO 27001 certified and more without the headaches. Vanta allows your company to centralize security workflows, complete questionnaires up to 5 times faster, and proactively manage vendor risks to help your team not only get compliant, but stay compliant. Stop stressing over cybersecurity and start focusing on growing your business in 2025. Check out Vanta and let us handle the tough stuff. Head to vanta.com/decloak to learn more. Because when it comes to your business, it's not just about keeping the lights on, it's about keeping everything secure. Thanks.
And not saying anything, but just listening, understanding the dynamics, the goals, the stresses of the team, understanding where they potentially compromise on standards in order to reach a goal, because that happens in every organization, and then coming up with effective solutions to do that. And so, from a professional challenge, I think the budgeting challenge that I always had is derived from the fact that I didn't quite understand how the business makes money. So the moment you do that, the moment you understand that, the moment that clicks in your head, the moment you start to speak in the acronyms that the CEO and CFO and COO and chief technology officer and chief product officer and general counsel and the board, the CMO speak in, is the moment you become part of the group. But if you go and you say, if we have a data breach, we're going to be offline for 22 days, you're not speaking the language. You're going to strike out. And that's a serious challenge.
It's interesting you say that, James. This is the second time in the existence of the Decloak podcast where someone's actually mentioned relationships. And I think as cyber leaders, there's not enough emphasis or concentration. I mean, that's absolutely perfect. But with you making it so clear by saying, just sit in, listen, learn, and what makes them tick. And that turn will probably open up ideas, opinions, and maybe avenues where you can scratch someone else's back. Then you're
Right.
gaining that trust. You're understanding their mechanisms, how they operate, and what is important to them. Because at the end of the day, you know, selfishly, they're only thinking about themselves, and rightfully so. So that totally makes sense. And understanding the insights and mechanics of a company will help you with your reconnaissance effectively. So yeah, I really like that. It's a really good take on it. And again, for people listening out there, relationship building is probably 50% of the battle. What we have, we
Yep.
tie it back to budgets. We always want more money because of certain things, but if we don't have those relationships or those connections or the trust, it's just going to collapse. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, it's gonna go away, and you're never gonna get anything fully implemented, and you're never gonna be able to win that battle because that battle is constantly based on relationships.
Yeah.
So find the common goal with the people who you want to have the most influence with, who you need on your team as your security and executive champions. Find that common goal. And if it doesn't exist, make it, find a way to make it happen, right? Um, you know,
I love
I
it. It
don't
sounds
enjoy
so.
golf, but I play a lot of golf.
Yeah, yeah, true, true. It's yeah, don't talk to me about golf. I'm absolutely horrific at it. And I've always been invited to things, and you're kind of like, I'll just be the guy that drives the golf cart. But you're absolutely right. These things aren't really necessarily in front of people because it is so obvious at times. But yeah, and moving on to the one topic that you want to discuss that needs relevance or cleaning up within the industry.
Yeah. So you know where I'm going here, Leo. I think we practice security wrong, right? And I think inherently, the way we started addressing security initially was effective because when you think of how it started antiviruses and firewalls, and that's simply because we knew how to control the ins and outs. That's where we needed to have security, and so that addressed a business issue that was a business process, right? The business process in the early days of firewalls and the early days of, I won't mention, well, we can mention companies like Checkpoint and
Yeah.
pioneers like Palo Alto and Fortinet and so many others kind of produced Cisco. They produced firewalls. Firewalls went set at endpoints and in server rooms for companies. They helped filter bad from good traffic going into your environment, and you had antiviruses on your endpoints to make sure that you identified malicious behavior on a desktop or a laptop or whatever endpoint you used. But over the last 10, 15 years, and especially recently over the last 4 or 5 years, you've noticed that no matter what we do, no matter what we invest, and you're hearing billions and billions and billions of dollars going into cyber, we're still seeing our adversaries become still remain successful against us. And you can blame that on a whole bunch of issues, right? Some companies overinvest and they're less into headlines, but they're still going through cyber events, right? They're just not having the impact they used to have. You've got companies who barely invest anything, then get hit, they're paralyzed, and they're all over the headlines. And then you've got that medium out side of it. And it's predominantly, I think, because there's an uncomfortable conversation that we need to have that I'm always open to having, which is we practice security incorrectly. We're seeing an obesity issue. And I'm going to compare this to obesity, not because of anything. And if you're obese, I'm sorry. Right. But the way I look at this is the following. There's an obesity issue in cyber. And the way we're solving the obesity issue is we're giving everyone diet pills. Those diet pills are borderline solutions around security that kind of identify the cause, that kind of identify the effect and remediate it, but don't identify the root cause of the problem. And the root cause of the problem that we have is our nutrition, right? It's our nutrition and lifestyle. So when you think of people that are overweight, that still want to eat pizza and burgers every single day, they still want to drink, a 6 pack of beers and still want to do all those things. And yet they go, why am I unhealthy? Let me take a diet pill. They take a diet pill, they feel great, they lose 30 pounds. Then they go out the door around the building, take that Simpsons episode of just people going through that factory over and over again. They get fat again. They get bloated. They come back in, diet pills. Oh, I feel great. Walk out. Pizza, hamburgers, go back in because the diet pill doesn't address the root cause of the problem. The diet pill for us is shiny security products. That's what it is. It's shiny security products, but the thing that we're lacking in security is identifying the root cause. Maybe we don't lack it. Maybe people see it, but no one's willing to take on that challenge. And that challenge for me specifically is identifying that the root cause of security is we all understand the cause, but none of us understand the process to get to the cause. And the root cause of the process is we're solving for problem X rather than solving for process X. And our systems are interconnected. We live in an interconnected system that relies on multiple supply chains. Don't believe me? Recently, we had CrowdStrike. I don't need to tell you what happened on the CrowdStrike incident with window devices, because if you've been living under a rock, then or you just woke up from a coma and you go, "What are you talking about?" Just watch a video after this one. Don't leave now. Just watch it after the fact, and you'll realize the fact that we're all interconnected. And I think the estimated global cost of the CrowdStrike outage is in the trillions. It's like $1.3 trillion, right? Like that's crazy. That's unheard of. An IT outage costing the global economy $1.3 trillion. Last time that happened was, I believe, Norton, if I'm not mistaken, in 2010. And then Norton sold to Intel some years later, and now Norton is a shell of the company it once was. I pray that's not the case for CrowdStrike. I pray. I pray that's not the case for CrowdStrike, because I never want to see companies fall. Not companies that have inherently done good for our industry. CrowdStrike's been a leader in detection and response. So there's, again, this isn't the fault. There's fault on CrowdStrike, but then again, CrowdStrike is addressing a cause, not identifying the root cause of the problem. The root cause of the problem is we solve security based on the cause, not the root cause, because we're not designing to business processes, we're designing to systems. And so inherently, there's always a flaw in the way we take that diet pill. So that diet pill may give you the result you want, it may reduce your risk score, but then eventually you still have an incident. And then you're looking at another way and another thing to bolt on to something that's already unhealthy. And so we have to go back to doing this. We have to go and rework security, right? And it kind of goes to going back to my medicine, my medical theory here. A triage doctor in the ER knows how to do triage. They know how to keep you alive just long enough, get you into OR so an expert can deal with your internal injuries. And it's time for security to go through an ER process where we get triage, then we go in and experts deal with this. And those experts have to come in the sense of business processes. How are we mapping a business process? What are the risks that come through different business processes? And then what's the unique way that we can solve to reduce risk and increase resiliency through those business processes? And for some organizations that do this really well, it's a combination of multiple tools. But for a lot of other people, they miss the whole big picture altogether. So they're worried about endpoints and they're worried about data, but then they're missing everything else in the middle. And then everything else happens in the middle. And then you wonder, why does this keep happening? Okay, we're going to switch from CrowdStrike to Sentinel-1. We're going to switch from Sentinel-1 to Cortex. We're going to go from Palo Alto to Checkpoint. We're going to go from Checkpoint to Cynet. We're going to go for, and you're constantly moving, and you're going like, I'm still having the same issues. Well, yeah, because it doesn't matter if you went to Jenny Craig or until you solve the issue of your lifestyle is wrong. You've got to go back, sit back, reprogram, recalibrate, and address the issues. And only then can you really build a resilient program that will increase the difficulty for your adversaries to take advantage of your environment. I'm off my rant now, Leo.
Nah, it's very relevant because you're right. It's just a never-ending cycle of this, that people aren't looking at business processes. They aren't looking at their enterprise architecture, as we discussed before we hit record, and they're not looking at the connections between everything within that life cycle. You know, they may be looking at maybe one or two components and completely missing the underlying issue. You know, it's like people always, big thing recently was either a SIM or CNAP, but they forget that maybe the reason they have so many vulnerabilities is because they don't have a patching window, or they don't understand what patching is in their organization, or even have the skill to identify these initial problems before you even have the abstract layer to give you the information to say, hey, you've got, 5 million vulnerabilities. It's like, well, maybe that's because organizationally people don't know how to develop good code, secure code, or they don't know how to deploy safe, secure systems. So yeah, totally makes sense to me. And I really hope that people start to change that mindset and that narrative towards, just looking to solve the problem rather than just a quick fix. And back to your whole, diet pill point, I think it's very, very relevant. And then any other items you want to add into that, or
Yeah. I think there's more to that. You brought up something really great here: vulnerability management, patch management, right? So you're talking about something that I think a lot of people still haven't comprehended quite yet.
Yeah.
So we get a vulnerability, we see a patch, and we go through a patch process. And I don't know if you've seen it, like a critical patch in most organizations, the policy is you got to patch it within 7 days. A high patch within, 20 days, 30 days, medium 60, low 90, whatever. And then different organizations have different timeframes. Don't quote me on it. Don't call me out. I'm just giving examples here, right? Well, here's where the challenge lies. The challenge lies in the fact that we don't quite comprehend our adversaries. And here's what our adversaries do. Within moment a CVE is assigned and disclosed, within 22 minutes of that becoming public, there's a threat actor out there scanning for vulnerable devices. Within 24 hours, there's some sort of exploit in place. 22 minutes to 24 hours. We give ourselves 7 days to patch it.
Yeah.
Right? So this goes back to diagnosing the problem. Diagnosing the problem means that in my current organization, we're very small, we're very nimble, right? So these type of conversations are much easier for me to do.
Yeah.
Tried to have these conversations in much larger organizations. Some have had more success than others. Okay. And I say that, and I'm 100% truthful in that aspect of saying I'm not always successful. But the strategy should be to go to your CTO or whoever's in charge of infrastructure and go, look, when we have an infrastructure issue, we need to build a patch management task force. If something is considered a 0 day or critical, we've got to be able to strip these guys of everything they're doing and get them going to apply the patch and the resolution and get that moved over as soon as quickly possible. What do we need to do to build out this task force within our organization? And what task force and what people do we need for what systems that are critical to our company? And we see that now with VMware, right? So VMware had what they consider to be a medium severity vulnerability, a 6.8 on the CVSS scale. For those who don't know, that's fairly mundane. However, within 24 hours, exploits. Ransomware groups already taking advantage of it. 4 of them already hitting hypervisors within corporate environments. So it's a 6.8. You go, what's the deal? Well, crime's been decentralized. 100% crime's been decentralized, like your favorite crypto platform, right? It's decentralized. So I'm a credential affiliate, right? I sell initial access to directories for ransomware gangs. I've got now access to exploit this hypervisor information. I'm reaching out to that affiliate going, what do you have for company X? I've got all of these. All right, I'll bring you in at 20%, 25% of whatever ransom we collect. Here you go, take it. Great. Now you've got a decentralized way that this operates. So it's not one threat actor doing the work. It's multiple different threat actors that have their own specialty, kind of like medicine. Neurologist understands brain, pediatric surgeon understands, your feet. Same thing applies within these cyber criminals. And so, and just because someone's a neurologist doesn't mean he understands cancer. They don't understand cancer. They're not the same doctor. They don't have the same specialties. We in cyber have not discovered how to connect those pieces very well. And it's not just in cyber, it's in business. How do we connect application development, product development, to supply chain, to vendor management, to applications, to data science, to finance, to operations, to HR, to marketing, to sales? We haven't been able to do this as effectively as our adversaries have. They do it very, very effectively. And that's why they're so successful. And that's why we need to rethink the way we practice security. And we need to rethink it in a way where we go about addressing the problem caused the process. And we can't ignore the human side of it. We build products to train humans to act different. I have yet to see any training actually work on changing human behavior. There's a saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I have a saying that says you can't teach any dog any trick unless they're a toddler. And since we're getting most people into the workforce in their mid to late 20s, you're not changing bad habits out of people. You might be able to put a dent in it for a little bit, but you're not changing bad habits. Sorry, I love all of these different training products and I believe in them and I use them because it's become a standard, but it's a flawed standard, right? It's a flawed standard, very similar to how our regulation on cyber are flawed and don't support the need to reshuffle security. Security has to be reshuffled also from a regulatory perspective. Our regulators, our governments are regulating our data breach reporting and data privacy requests, but they're not regulating a standard for security within their own economy, right? Within their own critical businesses. And there's plenty of great standards out there. There's NIST, there's CIS, there's so many great standards out there. Great standards that you can use, that you can set as a standard for an organization based on size, complexity, relevancy to your economy, and so forth. But you said it about it. You said there's a cycle, it keeps coming back and forth, it keeps rotating, and at some point, our economy is no longer going to be able to sustain these financial losses due to cybercrime. At some point, that's going to be a cause of a global recession. And at some point, people are going to start to take it very, very seriously. I hope we're able to recover from that point and not theoretically lose our freedoms to the internet. Because my biggest fear is a reaction to cybercrime is the limit of freedom of people on the internet in order to limit cybercrime. Kind of like saying you can't carry a gun in a public place, but so you and I adhere to it because we're a law-abiding citizen, but the bad guy isn't. He's still got a gun.
Yeah.
So now you're limiting my freedoms to protect me from someone, but you've never addressed the root cause of the problem. Hence, kind of modern civilization challenges today.
It's very relevant because, this almost acted like a pre-Black Swan event, the CrowdStrike, the damage to the economy, digital IDs and the whole restriction of freedom and freedom of speech. TikTok gets quite a bad rep because ultimately that's the number one platform for conspiracies and whatever else it may be, and whatever ticks a box for people. But it almost feels like through the damage of an event, that's where things become really restrictive for people, rather than saying, hey, maybe the problem's regulation, maybe we're not working with cyber industry experts, or maybe saying, hey, everyone, these are the three frameworks that everyone must adhere to. If you don't, your CEO goes to jail, or there's massive penalties, because ultimately we don't want, I don't know, let's say billions or trillions of dollars worth of damage to the global economy. The effort it would take to implement something, in my opinion, very small, but it would have such a massive impact globally, where that would either buy us some time or try and alleviate maybe 50% of the problem that we have. But you're right, how can we change mindsets and business operations and processes to deal with things like, if an exploit's out in the wild, people are actively exploiting that, as you said, within 20 minutes. And then it just gets bigger and bigger. We should be able to have an allowance to have like break glass processes. So then everyone galvanizes within an organization and works to focus on that one problem, because that can then scale and hit them at a microeconomic level. But maybe we'll get an analyst on the program and then we could,
When you think of it, right? You asked me earlier what the professional challenge is in getting budgets. The problem with getting a budget is the only time you win is through compliance. So the action of a security practitioner in most cases is compliance. But when compliance is flawed to begin with, when the compliance you're complying with is flawed, then experienced practitioners, really good CISOs I speak with, you speak with, people you and I know as practitioners, our peers, right? In the different Slack channels you and I are in, are going like, we manipulate this compliance to be able to knock out these three different risks items through that one compliance framework. And I think there's a broken piece of the cycle here. And that broken piece of the cycle exists because, one, the regulatory agencies that are kind of regulating organizations are influenced by multiple different stakeholders, and rightfully so, right? There's the lobbyists and the lobbyists for cybersecurity companies that say, hey, we definitely want you to regulate some sort of standard, and because we want more people to buy our product. And if you make it so that they have to do X, they'll buy more of our product, or be required to buy more of our product, meaning the market share we haven't tapped into will eventually become a market share we tap into. Um, and then you've got the legal side and the compliance side and the civilian side of data breach notification, which I completely agree with, by the way. I'm not saying we shouldn't regulate data breach notification. I just think we need to reduce the complexity of data breach notification
Yeah.
in the United States. I don't know if you know this or not, Leo. If you go through a cybersecurity incident, you have to report it to all 54 attorney generals, all 50 states plus 4 US territories. The cost of that, if you look at the average cost of a data breach and you say it's IBM just said it's like $4.88 million, the average cost of a data breach. For healthcare organizations, it's nearly 10 million. Well, when you look at that cost, 55% of that cost is legal. It's not even recovery. It's not even kind of rebuilding. It's legal. You're paying lawyers to go out and file a brief, a notice to different attorney generals in all 50 states and 4 territories in order to get that done. And to me, that's a waste of money.
Yeah.
Give me one federal agency to data breach to notify. Give me CISA, the FTC. I don't care. Pick a federal agency that exists. Don't create a new one, please, by all means. Right? Let me report it to one agency. Let that one agency then spread that report out to all attorney generals. And then let that federal agency work with inquiring attorney generals on second and third steps. Maybe the state of California attorney general wants to further investigate the matter. So you do that with the federal agency that I oversee. So I'm not really dealing with California and Texas and New York and Florida and Colorado and Virginia separately, which increases my legal costs by 600% because I got to have more and more lawyers and they're spending more and more time. And not every lawyer can practice in every state, and not every lawyer can respond to every state. So now your call with your lawyers isn't 2 lawyers responding to a federal agency, it's 15 lawyers because everyone practices in a different state and it's licensed to practice in a different state. And now you start to understand the nuisances of being a CISO, right? That's something no one ever told you about when you applied for a job to become a cybersecurity leader. Hey, when you go through an event, you're going to be dealing with 27,000 lawyers, and all of them are going to be billing you at $1,000 an hour, and all of them are going to jump on an hour call to bill you, and it's going to cost you $15,000 to be on an hour call with 15 different lawyers at $1,000 an hour. Not to mention your time, your general counsel, potentially other people within your business. That's a $20,000, $25,000, $30,000, $50,000 call that you're jumping on in order to report a data breach rather than set a standard. Set a standard. Let me go through a data breach, right? Let me report it as I should to one party. And then if there's a reason that in that final report, I didn't adhere to a specific part of a standard that you've told me to adhere to based on my size and industry, then investigate me and find me, and I deserve it.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, it's almost like it just makes logical sense. Obviously I'm looking at this from the outside in, but I guess, who knows, under the next presidential election, maybe things get less crazier. I don't know.
I have zero faith in any politician to fix this issue.
Yeah.
Right? And I say that on behalf of both. I don't care who the president is. To me, the challenge exists within the fact that um, um, regulators are making these decisions. The SEC, by the way, the SEC regulation on the 4-day reporting, filing, that 8K within 4 days, declaring a material breach is the biggest gift you could ever give cyber criminals.
Yeah.
Because that's part of their ransomware negotiation, right? You've got 3 days to pay me. And if you don't report it within 5 days, 6 days, and you're still going through a ransomware and you haven't done it, by the way, true, look this up, publicly available information. Okay. They'll start messaging the company saying, we're going to report you to the SEC for not reporting a material breach within the time frame that you're required to report it in.
And then they've got you over a barrel.
Oh, yeah. right?
So,
And and and
yeah,
and and they'll short your stock.
this is very
Seen
true.
that
Yeah,
happen too. Watch any major ransomware operation on a publicly traded company. When people look at Change Healthcare and go 22 million to paid in ransom, those guys made out like a bank shorting that United Healthcare stock. Look at that stock drop after that breach, and look how many short positions, all public record.
yeah,
Look who shorted that stock a week or two, a month before the ransomware happened, and ask yourself what they know that I didn't know.
yeah. I know it's a twisted game we're in, I guess. And then, moving into our last segment, then James, is the thing I always ask everyone is the one thing in cyber you think is BS that needs focus or needs to change.
So to I don't think there's a BS thing in cyber per se, right? Because I do think that we do important work, and I think most security practitioners want to keep their business safe. They want to do the best job they can. And I think most cybersecurity partners and companies that are out there trying to come up with solutions are really are identifying a cause, whether it's a diet pill or not, there's still a consumer buying it. And that's the beauty of the free market, right? The fact that we as consumers don't understand the root cause of the problem is a different situation. So it's different altogether. I do think there is one thing that definitely needs to kind of, I'd say change or identify focus is the basics. If you take the CIS framework, you look at the CIS top 10, you did that, just did that well, you reduced 95% of your problems. And it's not fancy and it's not glorious and it doesn't look good on a PowerPoint, but it reduces your risk and it gets the job done. And
Yeah.
I wish we more focused on rolling up our sleeves and getting the job done than a lot of the stories we get sucked into, which is, the wild black swan stories or imagine, or, the chatter I saw after the CrowdStrike outage to me was in one place heartwarming and in other places gut wrenching, because that can happen to anyone. It really could happen to anyone. And I don't think most people understand the business processes and the pressure that exist within an organization to meet specific deadlines, whether self-imposed or otherwise, that require that type of that type of result that ultimately leads to that type of event.
I think it's almost like we need everything glamorized or
Yeah,
sensationalized for people to wake up. And it's a really good point. There's been a lot of people suffering on the back of this event for CrowdStrike. We need to think of our fellow human beings that are working in the front lines trying to fix this. Then questions need to be asked about, maybe companies were rolling out the update and didn't test it before they just went straight into live production. Someone mentioned last night on an episode was United Airlines. It's like, how many times do they need to keep pushing stuff into like live production? And it's like, why is nobody verifying these changes or looking at them in isolation, rolling it out to a few machines? And then I think people just sometimes wanted just a quick resolve when it comes to cyber. But I don't know what your thought is on that.
yeah, I completely agree. Sorry, my little son walked into the
That's okay.
into into my office here, and I was like, oh wow, what's he doing? Um,
I'm actually
uh,
grateful. Mine's is in bed, so I'm like,
Yeah,
I'm okay.
you're yeah, he just walked down here, all of a sudden my office door opened and I see him through the crack between my monitors and my desk. I see him walk in and I was just like, "Hey, buddy." But luckily
It's
he
all
went to
good.
play with his toys outside my door, so we don't have a special appearance and he hasn't appeared on any social media and I try to keep it that way, right,
Yeah,
as
of
a parent.
course.
Um
Yeah,
and so I completely agree with with what you said. I think there's going to be a need to be a little bit more sympathetic to people. I mean, I spoke to someone I know at Delta Airlines. They were really largely affected by the
yeah.
CrowdStrike outage, and they had their IT people working 18, 19, 20 hours, you
Wow.
know, because they had to manually reset every single computer. Now, I live in Georgia. Atlanta's the largest Delta hub, the busiest airport in the world. 130 million passengers go through this airport every single year. That airport's got thousands of computers, if not
Yeah,
tens of thousands of computers. These IT people had to manually reset every single station, from self check-in to the stations at every single gate, um, to every single monitor, to every single customer service stand,
Wow, that's horrendous. Yeah.
right? And one of the largest airports in the world and the busiest airport in the world from a passenger perspective, built for that. If you've never flown through Atlanta, you know, some people love it, some people hate it. I love it. It's my home airport. I know it. I'm in and out of that airport in 15 minutes, but some people aren't so lucky. And a lot of people were stuck in Atlanta for 2, 3,
Yeah.
4 nights. And those employees felt that pressure, right? They felt that they missed a weekend with their family. They missed time. You know, some of them probably had kids had a birthday, family reunion, vacation planned, and they were called back. So yeah, we got to show a little bit of sympathy. Can't
Yeah.
just be the root cause. We'll get
Yeah.
to the root cause.
Yeah. But by then people won't care. And I think this is the problem within cyber as well, is, things are going to happen. They seem to happen once a year, maybe an outage in somewhere. But, I think there needs to be more investment on the human side. Understanding that, sometimes clicking a button can send something the wrong way. It happens, but you need to think of all the people trying to fix that problem. There aren't just like 10 million cyber or IT people just standing doing nothing. They're working, as you said, 18, 19 hours. There's that human cost. I think that, in my opinion, people don't have enough regard or sympathy towards it, and that's kind of tying into the whole BS point.
People
So
are very quick to want to blame someone for it. I'll give credit to George Kurtz, the CEO over at CrowdStrike. He stepped right up that morning. He was on TV, he was on Twitter, he was everywhere, taking the heat on behalf of his entire org while his org was working to recover. Number one, kudos to that. I know some people are trying to say, look, he was the guy who worked at Norton when they had their big outage, and now he's running CrowdStrike, and conspiracy theorists and all these things that are coming online and
yeah,
trying to badmouth a guy who built a very, very successful company, who's been through these events. Um, you know, I've met George a few times in my career. Seems like a stand-up guy. Don't know him in a manner that I could speak more to, but um, I applaud him for his leadership, because I think he didn't hide behind the PR statement. He didn't hide behind the live active blog on his website. He he went on MSNBC that morning within hours of the outage, was answering questions by reporters. That's
yeah, I
not
think
leadership. I don't know what is.
exactly. I think if more people put their hands up, I think that's another problem in the industry, is people are scared, or they're embarrassed, or they feel insecure. If you mess up, stick your hands up. Say, listen, we got it wrong. The best person I can think of, Trump. You remember when there was audio released and Trump was like, listen, I got it wrong. I said those things. I put my hands up, and it's like, whether you like him or you don't like him, it's like, you're kind of stuck in a jam. I know it's a pretty poor comparison, but when a major event happens or a major item impacts your life, and you're either at fault or you're involved in that cycle, then the only thing you can do is stand up and say, listen, we got it wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. It started off with what I told you very early on, right? Leadership, cyber, and someone who's looking to get in. It's we as a team. Um, and you take responsibility. If more people took responsibility for their actions, world might be a little better place. But as practitioners, and if you want to go into leadership, then you know that you not only get the title, the dinners, swag, the accolades, also get the blame. You got to be ready to understand that weighs into it. No different than an athlete, right? An athlete will get paid millions and millions of dollars to, you know. I went and watched Argentina play Canada in the Copa America, right? The opener right here in Atlanta. And Messi, I think, missed like 3 goals. He should have had a hat trick in the game, right? Should have missed 3 goals, right? Like easy shots. A Monday morning quarterback, this from the stands having a drink, mind you, right? But it seemed easy. And then when he watched it on replay, like, how could he miss it? He took responsibility. I mean, they won the game, right? but he understands that he's going to get criticized when they lose if he doesn't perform.
Yeah. And he'll be the first guy in front of the camera to talk about it, you know, as the captain and as, you know, the biggest player on the planet. And yeah, absolutely. But what we'll do, James, is we'll wrap up the episode. And
we're going way over. I'm sorry there.
No, it's all good. I'm just conscious your son's lingering, and he probably needs you to play with some action figures. Like my son, he's like, I need 2 hours, 3 hours a day. You know, it's like, no, can't be done. I'm working. So yeah, I just want to thank you for your time, James. Your insight and your thoughts. It's been invigorating. I think there's been so many elements that people will pick up on. And again, everyone, please like, sub, share, and also check out James's podcast, which will be in the description. And we'll also take a screenshot from YouTube, and then we'll stick it in. We'll embed as well.
Yeah,
so please go show some love. And then, yeah, again, thanks very much for your time, James. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it. Thank you all for tuning in.
Cheers, man.